Hello, my name is Christopher Fogel, and I'm Purdue Extension-Decatur County's Health and Human Sciences educator. As we begin to think about the beginning of a new school year, I wanted to reach out to teachers, administrators, and support staff and offer up some information on helpful tips and tricks on being mindful of our mental health. 2020 has already been incredibly tumultuous, and with the beginning of any school year, not even speaking of this year, there are so many unknowns, and it's more important than ever now to be aware of our own mental health. So in doing research, I reached out to a good friend of mine, Megan Sullivan, who happens to be a licensed mental health counselor. Megan also works as a school counselor and is incredibly passionate about what she does. So as I asked Megan what's some good information I can share, she said, I will email you over some things and you can use that in your video. As Megan began researching this, she became even more passionate about the idea, and she actually produced her own video, and you'll see that momentarily. And Megan does such an awesome job of delivering the information. There's no way that I would ever be able to duplicate it, and I'm not going to try. There's no need to fix it, because what she says and how she delivers it speaks volumes. So I encourage everybody that stopped by to check this video out, listen to what Megan has to say, because it can be applied to teachers and administrators and school staff, but it also could be applied to everyday life. So I guess my message really to any teacher, administrators, or support staff that has stopped by, you're doing an amazing job. I believe in you, and I know that you're going to do an amazing job this year. Anytime I am faced with a challenge, I always think of my favorite quote from Franklin Delano Roosevelt, that there's nothing to fear but fear itself. And with that, lead with courage, lead with confidence, and show your students how amazing you all are.
Hey there, my name is Megan Sullivan and I am a licensed mental health counselor. I'm coming to you today because my good friend, Mr. Chris Fogel, has asked me to provide some supports and ideas for things that are currently going on. In light of the current state of our day-to-day life, it's no surprise that a lot of us are likely experiencing more stress, which can present itself in a multitude of ways. Headaches, difficulty sleeping, weight gain, muscle tension, aches, rapid heart rate increase, maybe even some increased sweating outside of the hotter weather, difficulty in a lot of other areas, and even some increase in irrational fears, just to name a few. One stressor that is likely present in many households is the discussion about returning to school and what that's going to look like. And while we are really heavily focusing on the safety and education of each and every student, as we should be, there is a population of people being impacted that has just started to recently gain more light: teachers. As educators, administrators, and support staff begin to plan, prepare, and imagine what return to school will look like, so much focus is going into supporting the whole child. How we can meet them where they are, support their well-being, which doesn't always encompass learning new material. Sometimes it simply looks like acknowledging their fears, changes, and uncertainties, and learning how to deal with all of the newness and change in our daily lives. We also want to make sure that we are finding ways to do this for those of us on the front lines, an integral part of our social systems, and seriously like the basic bread and butter of America: teachers. So friends, at the request of my friend, Mr. Chris Fogel, I'm here, as I said, to give you a short list of, like I said, very short list of some resources and suggestions that I've compiled from my work in mental health that I find to be the easiest, most accessible, and cheapest ways to really make sure that we are focusing on our own well-being in order to make sure that those around us are doing better or that we can adequately support them. So before I get started, and before we start talking about the ever-common self-care topic, I want you to ask yourself this question: can you give the ones you love your best self if you aren't giving yourself enough to be your best? That's a question that I encourage all teachers, all adults, all parents, every single person to think about as we work on going back to our jobs, as we work on supporting those in our classrooms. And that is why this topic is so important, because oftentimes we find that we're so busy with the day-to-day that we don't always have time to prioritize things like self-care. And sometimes I have found in my line of work that when I say the word self-care, I get a lot of eye rolls. which I understand. It's like this new hot buzzword, right? But the idea behind self-care is not, ignoring the people around you. It's not prioritizing yourself over everyone else. It's simply recognizing that there are times where we really do need to put some of our own needs first in order to better serve those in our lives, whether it's at home or at our jobs, maybe both. So here are 5 things that I have come up with that I think will be most effective and most helpful for you. And I think Chris is either going to provide some additional resources that I'm giving him or cite some of this in his overall video, but I will have the resources to him in a document just in case. Use brain breaks to your advantage. So this is something that I have found, especially at the elementary level, is more common. Go Noodle, brain breaks are incorporated into the classroom a lot. So using those to your advantage as a teacher, and I don't mean taking advantage of them. I mean, hey, you know what? I have recognized that today I'm feeling a little bit more anxious than usual, and sometimes that can transcend into my classroom. So while my students will definitely benefit from brain breaks, maybe I can use one of those as well. So I'm going to schedule those more frequently into my classroom routine, not only to benefit my students, but to benefit myself as well. So when we're looking at it from a brain perspective, the amygdala is a portion of our brain that really is connected to anxiety. And you need to manage your amygdala so that it doesn't compound your stress and anxiety or create unnecessary suffering for you. Using mindfulness techniques for stress and anxiety allow your prefrontal cortex, which is like this part of your brain where you do all your rational thinking and decision making. It helps your PFC, your prefrontal cortex, calm your amygdala when it overreacts so you can avoid unnecessary suffering. So mindfulness is really stemming from meditation and a lot of concepts rooted in Buddha's work. So this comes from an article that I pulled, and it really talks about and breaks down the benefit of brain breaks and or the benefit of reducing stress through mindfulness on your amygdala. So brain breaks is something that I have found in the classroom is very applicable to this. You can also do them at home. Mindfulness is another thing that is a really hot topic right now. Mindfulness can mean a lot of different things, but typically what I find it to mean for most people that they understand it the best is really focusing on your inner thoughts, finding a way to calm and quiet your mind. You can find so many mindfulness activities on YouTube, online. There's even a wonderful app called Headspace, and it gives you guided meditation that can help promote mindfulness for yourself. So sometimes learning how to do it on your own is not easy. So doing guided meditation can help promote working on being more mindful in the thoughts and internal thinking processes that you have for yourself. Tip number 2 is finding time for self-care. So here's that big buzzword again. Self-care can mean so many different things. And I feel like sometimes people forget that you are probably already doing self-care in some form already. So it's not really about like going out of your way to go spend $1 million at the spa because that's your self-care. It's identifying the things that you do already that can be forms of self-care and either doing them more often, doing them more intentionally, or doing them in a more scheduled way, or just identifying what they are and then realizing when you're stressed, utilizing them. So some tips or some options that I have written down that I think are accessible for people are doing a gratitude journal, finding a podcast that you like to listen to, maybe on your way to work, on your way home from work, or while you're doing something throughout the day, whether it's like cooking dinner at night, folding laundry, taking a walk. So you have some intentional dedicated time, even if it's 5 minutes, to listen to something that is really helping you feel more centered and essentially refilling your cup so that you can assist others. Buy your favorite drink that you feel like is a treat. Or even every night before you go to bed, practice reflecting on the day. What are 3 things that went really well? What are 2 things that you feel like you wish would have gone better? And setting the intention for the next day. So self-care is not always ignoring everyone around you. It is simply finding a way to prioritize your own emotional well-being so that you can be your best self for those in your circle. And it is probably something that you're literally already doing. But just identifying what it is, and like I said, increasing it, doing it more often, or maybe finding a group of people who have similar interests and kind of making that like a self-care support group. Number 3, remember that your feelings are valid. Your emotions, your worries, they are valid. You are not alone in being worried, concerned, fearful, nervous, whatever about returning to work. That is so normal. And, with that comes feeling like it's okay to express these concerns and worries. Talk to your administration. Brainstorm ways to support staff. Maybe this means creating a monthly support group. Maybe it means you have a task force to help answer questions or work on new innovative ways to work in your current climate. Maybe it means asking a coworker if they have any really great social stories that you could use for your students because you're worried about how to address this. Those are all great options. Sometimes I think we spend so much time really trying to hone in on being the best for our students that we feel like it's not okay for us to be worried or to have concerns, but you are human. Having worries and concerns means that you are doing your job. And I say that because when in my previous line of work with my clients, if I had a parent who was like really, really nervous about something or they're really worried about something with their kid, I would always say, but that's so normal. That means you're doing your job as a parent. If you are worried about something, it means that you value the other person's experience and you value the other person's experience going well. If you didn't have worries or concerns, that would maybe mean that you are being avoidant of some stress. And so that's not what we want. We want you to understand that it is okay to have stress. It's okay to have concerns. Finding a proper outlet to voice those, and then subsequently, what's going to happen? How can I continue to manage this stress? And with that, I have a little link in here from some research that was done, the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, along with CASEL. So if you know about CASEL, Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, they did a huge survey and they found that, tons of teachers responded within like 3 days. And one of the biggest things was emotional well-being. So again, that goes back to understanding that your emotions are valid. We need to value and validate emotions of students, but also of teachers. And teachers are a great sounding board for students in that as you continue to mirror and work through emotions, your students see that and then they become more comfortable having those emotions as well. And it's okay to even articulate these things out loud. Who else was really nervous about coming back to school? Me. So it creates more of this open forum for us to discuss things and allows us to have less of a internal separation about how we're feeling and not feeling like we can have those feelings at work. Does that make sense? Okay. Number 4, find email subscriptions that can link you to other educators who are facing the same struggles. I find that Chalkbeat and Laura at Social and Emotional Learning are amazing. So they send maybe weekly emails. Some of them I delete, but most of them I save. They either link you to local news stories, local articles, or helpful resources that either can connect you to support groups or just things that you can use for your students. So with that, I find kind of reduces the anxiety that maybe I even have about how am I going to find all of the things to be supportive, which then leads me to have anxiety, which means, I need to find ways to support myself. So don't reinvent the wheel. Find people who are already creating things you're looking for, which will in turn support you and reduce the anxiety you have about trying to redo all of these things. Last but not least, number 5, turn off the news. Turn it off. I know it sounds totally crazy, but there is some serious detriment that can come from being inundated by the news. And I say this because I feel like we have all been just saturated with news since probably February. And I am not saying ignore the news at all, but I'm saying just like you are advocating for creating a schedule for your self-care, create a schedule for your news intake. I'm only going to watch this much news per day, because I find that when I watch more than that, my irrational fears, my headaches, my nervousness, my worry tend to increase. So know what is best for you, and it's going to be different for everyone. And try and stick to that. Look for your news from the same sources. Try and make sure they're verified empirical sources that you're getting your news from, and then do it on a somewhat scheduled plan. So maybe you watch the news in the morning, and then you watch a little bit when you come home, and then that's it. And when you reduce the amount of time that you're watching the news, go outside. Get some beautiful sunshine. There is so much research that supports increase in vitamin D, which you get from the sun, and how it supports emotional well-being. And I don't just mean like, oh my gosh, I'm tan and I feel better. I mean actual increase in vitamin D, not being deficient in vitamin D, being linked to or correlated with people who have less depressive symptoms, less anxious distress symptoms. So vitamin D is where it's at. Find some things to do outside with your family. Maybe that's a way you incorporate your self-care. And that is how you kind of support your whole self as you work on being the best you, so that you can support the whole child. So it's really a domino effect. And as we continue to work on finding a new normal, it's really important that you find a new normal for yourself first, because that will allow you to feel centered as you return to a setting that is probably not going to look like what it was before, and you are going to feel less chaotic in the transition if you yourself are grounded. That is all I have for right now. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to Chris. He has my contact information. I'd be happy to share additional resources. I'm going to link some of those to him. That includes podcasts, articles, videos, just some fun YouTube videos, and a couple of books that I think are helpful. As always, Google is or can be your friend when it comes to things like this. I find that getting a couple of really good resources, especially the email links, is helpful, because it kind of helps disperse helpful information, and then I can navigate through that and find additional resources. But if you have any questions, please let me know. I have really enjoyed getting some of this information out to you. I want to thank all of our amazing educators and school staff for doing what you do. You make differences in child's lives every day, and I know that the students are definitely looking forward to being back in school, seeing their friends, and the amazing teachers that you are. Have a great rest of your day.